The K-drama I had been eagerly waiting for since 2024 has finally aired, and let me just say it was nothing like what I had expected. S-Line, which initially gained international buzz after its premiere at the 2025 Cannes International Series Festival, Cannes Series, where it even won the Best Music Award, officially dropped its first 2 episodes on WAV on July 11, 2025. Now with 5 episodes out and just 1 more to go, I have many thoughts. First, let's rewind to how I imagined this show would be. Back in 2024, when only the synopsis was circulating and no trailer had been released yet, my imagination went wild. The premise? A mysterious red line that appears above people's heads, connecting them to those they've had sexual relations with. Throw in a detective obsessed with uncovering the truth, a quirky high school teacher, and a high school student who's been able to see these lines since birth, and I was picturing a 16-episode dark psychological thriller, layered with emotional trauma, high-stakes crime, and more action. A deep dive into the complexities of human desire and betrayal. But S-Line turned out to be very different. Not in a bad way, far from your typical high-octane, mainstream K-drama. There are moments of gore, yes, scenes that will make you think of Old Boy or even the classic bad guys, but for the most part, S-Line operates in silence. It carries a slow, introspective rhythm reminiscent of certain Japanese dramas, where pacing is deliberate and the tension brews quietly. Each episode doesn't scream for your attention, it unfolds, slowly drawing you in and then delivering a sharp sting by the end. Now, before we delve deeper into themes and structure, let's talk about the reason many of us hit play. In the first place, the cast. I'll admit it, I was here because of Lee Soo-Hyuk and Lee Da-Hee, 2 actors I deeply admire. I haven't read the original webtoon this drama is based on, but I know that director Arin has taken major liberties with the source material, and I respect that. Because what we have here isn't a fan service version of what the industry usually offers. It's something more thoughtful, smarter. You can feel that intelligence from the very first scene. So let's begin where the story does, with the character of Shin Hyun-Heup, played by rising star Arin. She's a high school student who, since her birth, but now at the age of 4, has been able to see the red lines. Not that she understood what they meant at first. She simply drew what she saw: innocent, childlike sketches of her mother, her father, and a strange woman linked to her father by the same red thread. That innocent drawing? It shattered everything. Her mother, either already suspicious or somehow intuitively aware of her husband's infidelity, sees the drawing and it breaks her. The result? She murders him. What follows is a traumatic unraveling. Her mother disappears, and little Shin Hyun-Heup is left alone. This backstory is presented quickly, almost too quickly. We don't get a lot of detail about the mother's fate, nor how Hyun-Heup copes afterward. But the show makes it clear that this incident marks the beginning of her emotional numbness, and shapes how she sees the red lines, not as fate or magic, but as something dangerous. Something that takes rather than gives. The very first scene of S-Line sets the tone, quiet yet eerie, and instantly filled with unspoken tension. We see Shin Hyun-Heup, played by Arin, peeking through the tiny gaps in her apartment window, which is almost completely covered in old newspapers. She's a shut-in, isolated, the kind of person who doesn't step out unless absolutely necessary. Her world is small, but her perception? That's what sets everything in motion. Outside, a black car is idling on the street. Inside is a man whose head is absolutely tangled with red lines, so many that it's almost laughable. One look and you immediately categorize him, classic womanizer, maybe worse. Next to the car walks a high school girl, and the man casually offers her a ride to school. She declines, quietly and firmly. You don't get a clear view of either of their faces, just enough to keep you guessing. And here's the part that grabbed me. There's a single red line faintly stretching from the girl toward the man. It's subtle, almost hidden. You're not even sure if it's real, but the scene lingers, leaving just enough ambiguity to hook you. It was this quiet little moment that made me stay. Then, in a rapid montage, we're introduced to Shin Hyun-Heup's backstory. Her childhood trauma, her ability to see the red lines, and her obsessive effort to understand what they mean. Trapped in her apartment, living a life of studied observation, she's more of an emotional observer than a participant. She believes these red lines have meaning, that they aren't just a magical aesthetic metaphor, but a truth that needs decoding. We're properly introduced to the high school girl from earlier, Kang Seon-ae, portrayed powerfully by Lee Yoon-sam. Though she doesn't dominate every scene, she becomes pivotal to the show's emotional and narrative thrust. Early on, we learn that she's being mercilessly bullied by the popular girls at school. And let me say, these bullying scenes aren't your run-of-the-mill push-and-shove moments. They're raw, cruel, difficult to watch. The kind of scenes that stay with you long after the episode ends. She's being extorted for money, presumably a significant amount, and when she can't meet their demands, she tries to scrape together what she can. She asks her uncle and even considers stealing it from a stranger, but she fails. Unable to face her tormentors empty-handed, she decides to skip school instead, which brings us to her uncle, Han Ji-Wook, played by none other than Lee Soo-Hyuk. Now this character is a bit of a slow burn. We know very little about him initially, just that Kang Seon-ae has been living with him long enough to have a room of her own. No quick flashbacks, no spoon-fed exposition, just quiet implications that their living arrangement has been going on for a while. And that something in that dynamic is off. Now here's the kicker. A few scenes later, the show recreates that same moment from the opening. The man in the car, the girl on the street, the offer for a ride. Only now we realize who they are, Han Ji-Wook and Kang Seon-ae, and suddenly the first scene clicks into place. That lingering question reemerges. Was there really a red line between them? Here's the thing. Nothing in the show confirms it outright. There's no glowing string, no dramatic moment of realization, just a silence. But what is made clear is, this scene A deeply resents her uncle, while Han Ji-Wook seems to care for her, albeit with very reserved boundaries. There's tension, avoidance, something unsaid but not what you might have first assumed. And that quiet discomfort? It's intentional. It becomes obvious that Seon-ae hates her school, her life, and this entire town. And it's not just hinted at, she says it outright. In episode 2, things take a sharp turn. She stumbles upon a strange pair of glasses, and when she puts them on, she begins to see the red lines herself. Her first discovery? Her main bully is connected to a teacher with a red line. Seon-ae sees an opportunity. She snaps a photo of the red thread linking her classmate and the teacher and sends it to both of them, blackmailing them for money. It's bold, desperate, dangerous, but her plan collapses quickly. The glasses are stolen by her bully, and the teacher, cornered and terrified, refuses to pay. By the end of episode 2, everything spirals. The final scene? Kang Seon-ae falling from the school's rooftop. And it's not vague. She doesn't trip, she doesn't fall. She is pushed. That moment, that is the second hook. The second jolt that makes you sit up and say, okay, I need to see where this is going. We need to circle back to Shin Hyun-Heup, the girl who's been able to see the red lines since birth, the silent observer whose perspective quietly anchors the story. In episode 1, a new layer of danger is introduced. A serial killer begins targeting women. His signature? He wears a helmet and kills without ever interacting or speaking to his victims. Cold, precise, almost mechanical. Shin Hyun-Heup spots this man early on, seemingly just another guy visiting his girlfriend who lives in the building directly across from her apartment. At the time, she mistakes him as the killer and even calls 911, but after he takes off the helmet and she sees that it's only her boyfriend, she doesn't think much of it. He doesn't stand out. Just another stranger in her limited, window-framed world. But here's the twist. That man is the killer, and he's been living disturbingly close directly above her apartment. Even more unsettling, he's also living right next to the building where the detective and his niece reside. So yes, all the key players in this story, they're neighbors. Whether they know it or not, the real turning point for Shin Hyun-Heup comes at the end of episode 1. She finally recognizes the man in the helmet for who he is, and a moment of quiet courage walks across the street to rescue his girlfriend, who's moments away from being his next victim. The scene is tense, visceral, and haunting, though I won't spoil every detail here. But this moment is transformative for her. It plants a new thought. Maybe she could use her ability to help people. That shift leads her to an unexpected decision. She returns to school, and that's where she crosses paths with Kang Seon-ae again, the detective's niece and the girl who, in episode 2, was pushed off the school's rooftop. In fact, it's Shin Hyun-Heup who finds her after the fall. And from that point forward, their stories begin to intertwine more deeply. Now, this is where the show's mystery really starts to take shape. We begin to learn that while Shin Hyun-Heup was born with the ability to see the red lines, there are glasses that allow others to see them too. The same glasses that Kang Se-a finds mysteriously placed in her school locker. And instead of doing the logical thing like turning them into the lost and found, she decides to try them on. Of course she does, because curiosity and desperation? Dangerous mixed. And here's where things get even darker. It's revealed that the serial killer was also wearing those same glasses. As the series unfolds, more and more characters, both victims and perpetrators, are linked by these glasses. A pattern starts to form. Anyone who ends up wearing them doesn't exactly get a happy ending. So yes, while Shin Hyun-Heup might have been born with this gift or curse, others are getting access to it through artificial means, and the consequences are brutal. Each episode from here introduces a self-contained side story, usually focused on a victim, a red line, and a moral dilemma. They're layered, unsettling, and consistently thought-provoking. But I won't dive into all of them here. Those deserve their own breakdown. Now that we've set the stage and established the world, it's time to zoom in and take a closer look at the two other major players, the detective and the teacher. Because what starts as a story about red strings of fate slowly twists into something more insidious, one about manipulation, voyeurism, trauma, and how knowledge, especially forbidden's knowledge, changes people. And both of these characters sit right at the center of that unraveling web. And here we are with Han Ji-Wook, the detective. Played by the ever-striking Lee Soo-Hyuk, one thing becomes obvious from the moment he steps on screen. This man is trailed by red lines like they're going out of fashion. The implication is clear: he sleeps around, and the show doesn't shy away from that fact. He's not in a committed relationship, not doing anything technically unethical. And let's be honest, he's handsome enough to get away with a lot in K-drama land. It's actually a refreshing deviation from the typical male lead. Han Ji-Wook doesn't follow the noble, emotionally unavailable, but secretly devoted trope. No tortured second lead syndrome or silent pining here. He's blunt, emotionally detached, a bit aloof, and well, if he wants to play the role of a self-aware male whore, that's his business. As long as no one's getting hurt, who are we to judge? That said, there's this scene in episode 2 that had me raising an eyebrow, not in shock, but more in confusion. While investigating the serial killer case, Han Ji-Wook is seen taking notes in an old-school notebook at a bar. A random woman notices this, finds it cute that someone still uses pen and paper, and just like that, bam, one-night stand. Nothing explicit is shown, but the pattern is unmistakable. It's not that these scenes are titillating or even particularly romantic. They seem to exist for one purpose: to show us Han Ji-Wook sleeps with random women. A lot. Does it add to the plot? Not directly. But it certainly reinforces the image of a man with way too many red lines. Despite this, Han Ji-Wook is not portrayed as a terrible person. He's strangely balanced. The kind of guy who will scratch a coworker's car twice, but at least he'll own up to it. He doesn't seem emotionally available, but he does take his job seriously. Not with dramatic flair or moral speeches, but with quiet consistency. He investigates. He follows leads. He does the job. His relationship with his niece, Kang Se-on, is also interesting. He cares, but he respects boundaries maybe too much. When she shows up with visible injuries, he asks about them. Once or twice, but he doesn't press, doesn't demand answers. Honestly, if my niece came home looking like that, I'd be flipping tables. But Han Ji-Wook? He backs off. It's a choice that makes you wonder, is it emotional distance or something deeper? Which brings me to why I question whether or not he could be a villain. First, there's the ambiguous opening scene, the red line moment between him and Kang Se-on. We still don't know if that red line truly connects them, and the vagueness lingers. Second, there's a jarring scene where Han Ji-Wook is called by a nursing home because his father has gone missing. He finds him standing on a rooftop, ready to jump. And for a long moment, Han Ji-Wook doesn't rush to save him. In fact, he pauses as if considering letting him fall. Again, we don't know their backstory, but it's chilling. So while Han Ji-Wook isn't your traditional hero, he isn't your typical villain either. He's somewhere in between a character in moral grayscale, which makes him all the more intriguing. The high school teacher, portrayed by the wonderfully sharp Lee Da-Hee. She arrives in episode 2 and immediately grabs attention. At first glance, she seems like the kind of teacher we'd root for no nonsense. Assertive, willing to stand up for bullied students. When she finds Kang Seon-ae being harassed in the classroom, she doesn't hesitate to drag the bully out and toss her aside like the trash she is. Points scored. But as the series continues, cracks begin to form. There's something about Lee Kyu-Jin's demeanor that doesn't quite fit. She acts normal, perhaps too normal. And then there's her reaction. When the infamous glasses appear in the narrative, the ones that let people see the red lines. Her response is ... off, suspicious, as if she knows something she shouldn't. And here's a curious detail. She's no red lines at all. The series seems to make a point of this. Does that mean she's a virgin? Emotionally repressed? Morally untouchable? We don't know. But in a world where everyone's tangled in red, her lack of any connection is unsettling. Later on, a pair of the red line glasses ends up in Han Ji-Wook's possession, and that grabs his attention. Why? We're not told. Yet, but it's clear. The glasses mean something, and their link to both the detective and the teacher is going to matter probably in episode 6. Will it be fully explored? Hopefully. But the show's pacing suggests it might be rushed. The two characters, Han Ji-Wook and Lee Kyu-Jin, do end up working together. But if you're expecting tons of shared screen time, chemistry-filled arguments, or dramatic alliances, lower your expectations. This is not that kind of drama. Their collaboration is functional, minimal, and likely to culminate toward the end. Again, that might be a creative decision or just a limitation of the shows. With only 6 episodes, the series stands out for its unique writing and directorial approach. It doesn't follow the standard formula. It dares to be different, and that in itself makes it worth your time. The concept is intriguing, the visuals are distinct, and the narrative takes some bold turns. If you're looking for something that feels fresh, that tries to twist the traditional K-drama mold, then yes, this is one you should check out. But would I watch it again? No, probably not, despite its strengths. It didn't give me the kind of emotional depth or character resonance that lingers after the final credits. Yes, there were moments that caught me off guard. Yes, it kept its mystery well hidden. But when it came to truly connecting with the characters, it simply didn't deliver. There was too much going on and not enough time to let it breathe. With so many side stories, plot devices, and red lines to follow, the show spreads itself thin. You end up watching more for the sake of the plot to find out what happens than out of genuine emotional investment in the characters themselves. Take the niece, for instance. She's a major plot driver, pushed off a rooftop by her bully. It was tragic, sure, but emotionally, it didn't hit as hard as it should have. It was sad but distant. Even her slow transformation from a bullied girl to someone braver and more proactive felt more like a checkbox than a fully realized arc. As for the detective and the teacher, there's chemistry. There's potential, but there's not enough time. Their scenes together are limited, their development rushed. And that's the core issue with this series. 6 episodes simply weren't enough to do everything it tried to do. It needed more time to let characters grow, relationships evolve, and emotions land with the impact they deserve. So yes, it's a one-time watch, and a pretty good one at that. It's well written in terms of structure. It has gore. It has unsettling, bloody moments. It plays with symbolism, especially the red lines, in creative, sometimes chilling ways. And it definitely stands apart from the usual K-drama tropes. But in the end, it's not the drama I hoped it would be. It's not the kind of series I'd revisit. Not the one that leaves you emotionally raw, changed, or haunted in the best way. It's a well-executed idea that stops just short of being great. And now all that's left is the finale. Let's see if the last episode has a final surprise tucked away. But really, how much can one episode possibly change? We'll find. If you enjoyed this review, like and subscribe to this channel. Your support means a lot.